We had a question in the forum today. It didn't get posted to the thread for the webinar, but I posted that I'd show this tonight. A lady wanted to know how to do a reverse stencil, and I assume it's a lady, and she gave this as an example of something, a reverse stencil she'd like to know how to do and make the cut. And this, there was another one here, this one here. These both happen to be designs in the Silhouette store. So first I thought I would address stencils and reverse stencils with simple, and she wanted to know where we could find stencil files to cut, because she's new to her cutter and new to her software. So she wanted to maybe purchase stencil designs, reverse stencil designs in SVG format. So what I want to do, the other question was, can she use these designs and make the cut since they are from the Silhouette store? So it's a multiple faceted question that I will address. First of all, in Make the Cut, we have a gallery, which somebody suggested that she check. If you click on the icon that looks like a tic-tac-toe, you can go in, you end up with this search window for the gallery and Make the Cut, and it will search over 12,000 user contributed files. So I typed in the word stencil here and just clicked on descending, and I'll click on search, and now we come, it says that we found 29 stencil files, at least files that are labeled some kind of stencil. The first one that I came upon that was what I would call a real stencil would be this rose border stencil. A stencil design would have spaces between all the components, and you'll notice that there are no inside shapes. Now a reverse stencil we can do, you just make this a little smaller. To see the reverse stencil, or what would, it would be what is left after you cut this out of a piece of material. So let's say I'm cutting vinyl, I'll make it green so that we can see what happens here. To reverse the image, I would go up to Basic Shapes and type in SQ under Find, double click on the square and get that square. And what I'm going to do is make the square go around the design just by stretching it out. And if I'm going to be keeping this background piece, I can make it whatever size I want that background to be, whether you want the stencil on the side or if you want it on the center. You can make it whatever size, or you can make it whatever shape. I did this with circle earlier just to show that you can do this. I want to make this stencil in the center of the rectangle, so I'll just type S, and that centers it vertically and horizontally. So to see what would be left over after I cut out that stencil, I click on the join icon, which is the center icon at the bottom with the two arrows pointing together. So now I have what I would call a reverse stencil. This is, again, what is left over after I cut the stencil pieces. Now you see that there are no inside shapes inside the white area, which would be important because if there were additional shapes inside, they would just fall out, and we would need to adjust our design accordingly. So this is what I would call a reverse stencil. If I undo it, Control Z, then this would be the stencil. This is the, and what we got with going back to, again, joining it would be the reverse stencil. So you could do either one or the other, and you can change basically any stencil design into a reverse stencil. So what I did was go online and type in here stencil flower. And there's a number of images for stencil flower, and you could do any one that you would like. Let's say that I like this. There's one that I found. This is a simple one, spray tattoo. I did this one earlier. So you click on it to get it bigger, right click and copy image, then come to make the cut. And we're going to use pixel trace to get the image in to make the cut, which is this icon that has 4 little squares in it arranged in a curve. And then click on paste and import, and you have your image. And it's a pretty large image. And you notice there's text here we don't need, so I'm going to split it using the 5th icon from the left and just select that to delete the information there. Now you notice that this is a stencil because there are no inside pieces. If it had inside pieces, we would need to break it apart and create spaces between the pieces, as you see here, so that each piece is separate, that there are no inside pieces that would fall out. To make it a reversed image, as I showed on the form earlier, I click on basic shapes, and this time I'll type in CI to get a circle, double click, and again you can use any shape you want. I'll go back to the green mat so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to make this circle big enough to fit both. I'm going to select all and type S to stack them. Oops, they weren't joined. Undo. And I'll show you what happened here. These are all individual pieces, so if you don't want them to collapse on each other, you click on join. Now I can select all, Control A, and stack, and now they're all stacked together, and I'll join, and you can see what it's going to look like as a reverse stencil. So it's a simple operation, just joining 2 shapes, and you get to see the reverse. Or I think we have an option up here. Do we still have an option to see the reverse? We used to. I don't use it. Anyway, this is the reverse stencil.
Oh, you
now
should
then she posted. What's that?
Hang on, I was looking.
missed your comment.
Yeah,
up here on this question.
Oh, it's the icon next to the cut.
This is it.
Yeah, the cut preview, and if you cut
Magnifying glass.
If you do it twice, it gives you the reverse too.
Okay, so yeah, you can click on this magnifying glass and you can see how it would cut out as a stencil, and then you can see how it's going to cut out as a reverse. So that's helpful if you're looking to check a design to see if it would be suitable. So let's go back to the images that you posted here, being from the Silhouette Studio. Now this one is more like what I would call a reverse stencil, and I'll show you how we would do that. This one I don't consider to be a stencil. It's more of an overlay, because you see it has a solid shape outside, and then it has pieces that are enclosed on the inside. So this is not really a stencil, but an overlay. And we can create this kind of design very easily and make the cut, so I can show you both. The first thing I'll do is go to Silhouette Studio. Silhouette Studio had a mandatory update last night, so that you must use version 3 in order to download from their store. Now, this is the design that she wants, and I don't own it yet. If I owned it, I would see it say you own this already. Well, I don't own it. In order to purchase it, I have to have the newest version of the software. So I decided I'll go ahead and buy it so you can see what happens. So I add it to my cart, I think. Yeah, it's in my cart. And this is the latest download of their software. And now I'm going to go to my shopping cart and I'm going to check out with PayPal and pay my 38 cents for this design. And boy, we're slow today. Then I make my payment. This is the Cornish Star Reverse. And I submit. So now I'm waiting for this design, and it's downloading into my recent downloads. So it's there now, and I can double click on this star. And there it is right there. Now, I'm going to show you how I use it, and I'll show you how you can do it. If you don't have the Designer Edition, to find out if you have Designer Edition, go under Help, About Silhouette Studio. And mine says Silhouette Studio Designer Edition Release 3.3.638 SSDE. So I have that. So, if I don't have Designer Edition, what I want to do is select it, and I'm going to click on this paint bucket and fill the design with black. Then I'm going to click on the lines and fill them with black so that I have a black design. And I'm going to make it as big as I can get it. Now I'm going to go to my Windows snipping tool, and I'm going to click New and drag my mouse around the whole thing, and now I have the design in my clipboard. Now I'm going to go to make the cut and click again on Pixel Trace, paste, and import, finish tracing, and I now have the design here. I can make it any color that I want, and I'm ready to cut this just as I would have if I were cutting it from Silhouette Studio to my Cameo. The design has, I'm going to show you now another way to do it, which is a little more precise. It's not bad, but sometimes the designs lose a little bit in that pixel trace of the tiny, tiny detail. So the other way that I like to do it with the Designer Edition is now open up my 1.9 software and go to my recent downloads, and if I close down the software, I don't know, it'll take me a long time to open it up. That design will show up in my older software. At least it did earlier today. Now somebody told me that they had to actually shut down their computer for that design to show up. But I'm going to go to my Silhouette 2.0. You can go to 1.9 or 2.0, and once it opens, and it's going to be really slow, you can, I'll wait for a minute for that to open, and then I'll show you. I can hear you eating, Brian.
Sorry.
Okay. I do happen to own the one that is just this Cornish star without the stencil, and so I thought maybe I'd show you from that. It's not opening because I'm running really slow here, and it all takes a long time. Okay, this is the I'm going to copy this to a new page here. This is the one that I purchased, which is the same design, but it doesn't have the outer stencil. And the question was, well, how do I make a reverse stencil out of a design like this that has all these inside pieces? So to do that, I'm going to click on the shadow layer, which is the fourth icon from the right, and I'm going to add a shadow. You can add a shadow of whatever size you like. You can look at the beveled shadow, gives it rounded, mitered, it gives it some weird squared off shape, so I don't want that. Or rounded gives me a smoother shape. They actually got a pointed shape, which I can show you as well, but I'm just going to click on accept here with a 0.1 inch shadow. And again, we'll go to the green so we can see it here. So now I have a shadow. I can join all of this. I don't really want to join it. I want to break apart this by using the break. And then I'm going to select the two outside lines that hold a shift key while I select them. I think this is how I did it. And hide all the inside pieces. Join these. And what I want to do is get rid of, I need to open up all these lines in order for this to be made into a stencil, because otherwise this center would fall out. So I'm going to click on the node editing tool on the left toolbar and click on the eraser tool, and I've got, I'm going to make my eraser 2 millimeters wide. We'll see if that works, and hold the control key. What I want to do is create a space in between each places where these lines join, and I use the eraser tool when I want to make a stencil. So by doing this, I'm making a stencil out of this outer edge. And I was trying to take it through the center of each connecting point. And the eraser should not erase anything that's hidden, but just that which is showing. So now I will show it all and click on Join. And now I have a stencil. Notice everything's separate. Now to make it a reverse stencil, again, I'm just going to add a square. And make it big enough to cover everything. Select all and stack with S. And now just join. And now I have a reverse stencil that looks remarkably similar to what we were looking at before. So I'm going to copy this and take it over here. This is the design that I got from the Silhouette online store. And you can see that I have the same design here, but this is all connected here, so this will kind of pop out, or it's what I would call a reverse stencil. Now they made their shadow a little thinner, and they also kept it pointed. To do that, I might, let's see, where was that? I can, There it is. I can take this, I'll copy it, Control-C, Control-Shift-V to paste in place. On this one, if I want those pointy angles and I want to keep them and I don't want to use a shadow necessarily, what I would do is hold Control-Shift and make another copy and black it out, and then make it slightly larger. Now I would select both and type S to stack and see the outline so I could check to see is this big enough, and just make it a little bigger and stack. So you see that I keep the points that way, and but you end up with a different type of shadow here. So select all and stack. So that's another option if I were to create the shadow out of that. I can just go again to my eraser tool, change that to 2 millimeters, hold a shift, and it won't do it unless it's all joined. So there you see I've created that little line just the same as I did before. So I'm getting the sharp points on it. That's really the only difference. And then I would create the reverse of it by adding the box and joining. Now you can be picky about how straight you draw these lines. And so now I can look at this with the fill and add the square, drag around it, select all, stack, and join. So now I have a different version. So you can do it either way. Silhouette Studio never opened up. Okay, so we have this one, and while that's working on opening, I thought I would show you the other one that she wanted. Happens to be already in my library. So if I go to library and then go to, I put it in backgrounds and overlays. And I'm going to go hunt for this one that starts with an S. That's a spindle flower reverse. So I have it already in this software. So it should also be in my Silhouette Studio Designer Edition 2.0. So since I have it open now, I'm going to go and first see if the one I just purchased is really going to be there under recent downloads. There it is, Cornish Star Reverse. So that leads me to believe you're going to have to refresh your 2.0 or 1.9, shut it down and then open it up again after you have downloaded. If you recall, I saved that file from 3.0. I downloaded it from 3.3.368. Well, it is now showing up in my recent downloads of 2.0 on the same computer because I have both programs operating on the same library with the same designer edition. Now the question that, so I'll show you how I download this from 1.9. I have this at 1.9 or 2.0. This is 2.0 Designer Edition. So I go to File, Save As, and we'll call this Cornish Flower Reverse, and I type in SVG. So that will save this flower as an SVG. Now I just purchased this, so I want to use it in Make the Cut, or I want to use it with one of my other software programs that uses SVG. I go to File, Import SVG, or I could click on the SVG icon up here, go to Cornish Flower Reverse, and I have that file here. Now the difference in this and the one that I traced is that we get sharper points, cleaner angles, and a better imported image. So it's already the same as the reverse stencil was. I didn't have to work to change it at all. It's an SVG file. Now that same SVG file that I saved from there will also go into other programs such as Surecuts a Lot or Pazzles InView or Cricut Design Space. They work in all of the programs that use SVG files. So all I did was download the file from version 3, or the latest version of 2.9 in Silhouette Studio will work for you to download your purchases. But then if you want to save as SVG and you have the Designer Edition, you have to go to 2.0 and you have to go to your library to find the file you just downloaded, and then you can use it. So I had another one here that was the background overlay, and it's one that I had purchased previously, so it's Spindle Flower Reverse. So I'll double click that. Of course I should get rid of what was there first. Now I have this. This is my design that I just purchased. I'm going to go to Save As, and I'm going to call this I can't remember what I called it. What's it called? It's called Spindle Flower Reverse. Okay, Spindle Flower Reverse, and I'm going to save it as an SVG file. I'll just save it as number 1. And so now this is an SVG file. I will get a new thing here. Click on SVG, find Spindle Flower Reverse 1, and there it is in all its glory. Now if you don't have the Designer Edition, they tell us that if you purchase the Designer Edition today, that it won't work with the older software versions. So you would have had to have purchased that before. So if you never purchased it before, you can always just go to the store after you purchase it and fill it with color. Click on your Windows snipping tool and grab it there. Open Make the Cut, click on the pixel trace, paste, and on colored images I click on Color. Move this despec over a little bit so I don't get a lot of these tiny little fragments, and then Apply and Import, and I have my image. So let's compare the two of these. I got a pretty nice trace, but it is not quite as accurate to the original SVG, and where I notice it most is right here on these little points where the little diamond shape is. They're a little more round here, if you notice that. The points are a little more rounded. And so you're not going to get quite the precision that you would if you import the SVG. It is possible if you take that design and you fill it with black, you might get a better trace, more precise trace. So you can, this is the version 3, latest version 3. So I give it black lines, black fill, the Windows snipping tool. Oh, and I'm gonna click away from that because I really don't want those lines around it. Now I'll do the snipping tool and grab that black image, and we'll import that and see the difference here. So click on the pixel trace, paste, and import. So we'll look at these, having them the same size. I want to compare it to my SVG. Now, it has a little more definition. You look at those corners. This is sharper than this, but this is closer than this. So the color didn't get quite the quality of the angles as we got on this one. The goal is to get your design as large as possible in whatever version you're using. Fill it with black and you'll get more. And also, you want to make it just as big as you can on the screen so you can get it all in one screenshot. So if you don't have the designer edition, and it's not going to do you much good to try to save as SVG if you've never had it before, because they say that you can't. I don't know if that's true. Somebody will do a workaround, I'm sure. But it's working for me and for everybody that I've been able to help lately. Try to, I wanted to show you how do you back up these files. If you have a designer edition, before you install a new updated version, go to My Computer and local disk C, then Program Data. Double click on that. Now there are 2 folders here that start with COM. This one, the first folder is called Silhouette Studio 8, and this is your library. That's what makes everything from version 3 show up in version 2 or 1, because they both use the same library file. So everything you got in one should show up in the other. So if you buy one from 3, it should show up in 2 or 1.9. Now this is the license folder for the designer edition. I had this before the update, so it still works. They said if you have the designer edition before the update, it should still work. When I right-click on this folder and I go to Properties, you'll notice down here under Attributes that it says Read Only, and I have that checked. I say OK, because I only want to have my computer read this. The newer version steals the designer edition and applies it to the latest download. And you don't want it stolen from your 1.9 or your 2.0, because that's what allows you to save as the SVG. Now the other thing that we need to be aware of, so you want to back up these. You want to copy these 2 folders before you upgrade and put it on an external drive or a thumb drive and save it, so that if you ever lose the ability to save as SVG or lose your license, or you get a new computer, you want to copy these files, these 2 folders that start with COM. You want to copy these to your new computer under Program Data, C, Program Data. The other thing that I do to prevent problems is go to Program Files x86, and I'm on Windows 7 Pro, but it's the same in Windows 8.1. It just looks different, but you're going to go to Silhouette Studio, and this is what you would do first. You notice that I have 4 versions installed here. I have 2.0, 2.5, 2.9, and 3.3. But I've labeled each installation with the numbers for the version, and you need to do that because when it updates, it'll update to Silhouette Studio and overwrite any other folder named Silhouette Studio. So within that folder, you'll see that there is a silhouettestudio.exe. Well, I haven't changed that one because that's the default. But under Silhouette Studio 2.0, you notice that I changed the name of the exe file to Silhouette Studio 2.0. I've been bombarded for 2 days now with questions about what do I do, what do I do? Because I don't use the latest version and they're requiring me to update. So you see it, I renamed the folder. To rename a folder, you right click it, you can go to rename and change the name by adding numbers. I just add the 2 numbers for the version. Then inside the folder, rename the exe. Well, notice in here, in this version here, I renamed a folder, but I forgot to rename the exe file. So if I click on it once and click on it twice, I can call this 3.3, and I will continue. But that will also mean that I need to make a new desktop icon that will find that file. So I could right click and does it give me create a shortcut right here. So I click create a shortcut. It says it can't. Do I want it placed on the desktop? Yes, I want it placed on the desktop. So now on my desktop I have the right shortcut for starting 3.3 since I changed the name of that start exe file. So, have any questions? Have I totally lost everybody here? You see, I have this new start thing that now tells me when I click on it that I'm opening version 3.3. So, any questions?
There's one from Pam, says she doesn't see her program data on her drive. Is it hidden somewhere? She has Windows 7.
If you don't see program data, it could be hidden. So you would need to go to your Windows setup and show it, have it show you show hidden files. Brian, do you know how to do that? If I go to my computer and maybe system properties.
Usually, no. Go back to my computer. Go to Tools.
Okay. See.
No, View. Maybe I'd have to fool around with it to see where it is here.
I'll right click and go to Properties, maybe Tools here. Security. I had my son set this all up to make it look like XP.
Go to Organize. Close out of this. Go to Organize. The drop down up here, next, right below your menu. Yeah. Go to Folder and Search Options. Go to View. And then Hide Protected. So your second one from the bottom of your current scroll. Now it's stop moving it. The Hide Protected.
Hidden files and folders. Show hidden files, folders, and drive. So you're going to do on what we just did. That's, you're going to right click on, oh, you're going to go to My Computer, and then at the top where it says Organize, click on Organize, then on View for the folder options.
Then on, click exit out of this so they can see it again. Click on Organize.
Okay, so Organize.
And then Folder and Search Options. Then
Folder and Search Options. View. And Hidden Files and Folders. Show hidden files, folders, and drives. And that should allow you to get to see the program data. If I didn't have that checked, I wouldn't be able to see it either. Okay? Good question. Glad you're here to tell me, Brian, because I have no idea. Okay, yeah. So program data is what you're going to back up. You need to keep a backup of your library anyway, even if you don't ever want to use another version. If your computer crashes, let me show you in here in my library. I have 12,451 images. If I crash this computer, I could lose those, which I really don't want to lose them. And most of all, I spent weeks organizing all these. And I would lose my organization if I have to go back to the online store and download them again. I'd still have to put them all back in their little folders, which I had to do one time when I followed their instructions. So don't follow their instructions. Just make sure you go to your C drive, double-click, go to Program Data, then copy this folder that starts with COM and ends with Studio 8. This is your library folder. So right-click it, copy it to a thumb drive. Mine is 2.22 gigabytes, which is over 12,000 designs. It's not huge. It'll fit on a thumb drive, or put it on an external drive to save it. And copy your license folder if you have the designer edition to preserve that. I don't know what their new version did, their latest update did, to make this ineffective for new licenses, but they say it won't work with new licenses on older versions. So that's the latest scoop that I've been answering constantly for 2 days now. So I hope that helps. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's actually, I missed the very first one. If you can go to your questions, well, I'll read it for you. You may have answered this. I was not paying attention because I was working on the image question from earlier.
Okay.
So Patricia says, well, if you can bring up your questions and read it yourself, you'll probably get it better. But she says, this is more about security-related update to Silhouette. I just went online, and before I can go any further, I have to make an update. I use version 1.9. Will this change the version I use? I buy lots of their images. I break apart, select all, then make object, make compound path, and save as SVG. Will this update take my ability to do this? That's what you just sort of just explained, right, through that.
Well, I just explained that, but it's a very important question, and people are getting really hung up on this. It's the easiest thing to do. All right, you have 1.9, and many people do. If you have 1.9 or 2.0, before you do the update, go to this program data folder, copy this Studio 8 folder and the license folder to somewhere else, because you might need to paste it back in. People have told me after putting in the updated software, they've lost these folders. So if you lose them, you just want to paste them right back in. Now, I don't know if that's true, if there was something else that they were doing, but the other thing you must do is right-click, well, you can right-click on this license folder, go to Properties, and change this to Read Only. It applies to files in this folder, and that is so that your license won't be transferred only to the new version of the software. currently with the older versions as 1.9, if you own the designer edition already, this license would apply to both or all 3 or 4 versions that you have. This license would make all of them designer. But if you don't make this read-only and thus write protected, the newer software will take it for the newer software, and then you lose the designer edition in the older version. Then we lose the option to save these as SVG and use them in Make the Cut. So that's why I'm going over this during this webinar. Somebody asked me, why are we talking about this in an MTC group? That's a silhouette problem. Well, no, it's a Make the Cut problem if you like to use your purchased files and Make the Cut. So you want to make sure that you do the read-only before you install the new software. If you accidentally install the new software without doing the read-only, well then go get your backup, copy it back in here, and then make it read-only. Some people, every time they've used the 3.3 version, have had to go back and just repaste in, and doing that is very redundant. You know, every time you download, then you got to go paste your backup back in here. So you don't want to have to do that. So currently, I'm finding that my downloads are showing up if I close out my 2.0 and then open it up again. My downloads, as I showed you tonight, these downloads show in both versions. The same as I showed you here, the file, go to library and recent downloads. So I bought this file tonight. It's showing up here. To find the version, you'll go about. This is 2.0. So I downloaded in 3, and here it is in 2. And that is how I'm going to be using that file. So I hope I've been able to clear up some of these questions.
Yeah,
so you have to download in 3. Then it'll show up in 2 or 1.9.
Okay, so the next question is from Barbara. Julie, I renamed my whole studio file folder to just 1.9. Do I still need to rename the other things in that folder? I also have the other silhouette, and then that stops there, so I'm assuming the other silhouette version.
I'll show you why I rename those. If we go to the files x86 and go to Silhouette Studio, if you don't rename anything, then when you install the new version, it's going to install as it was in mine, just Silhouette Studio, and it won't have a number unless you designated that specifically when you installed it. But the information inside the folder, you'll notice that the name of this file is Silhouette Studio. Before I added the 33, it was just Silhouette Studio. Well, if you look at your 1.9, as in my 2.0, it probably just says Silhouette Studio with no number here. And if you have 2 files with the same name, and this goes for whether it's 2 versions of Make the Cut or 2 versions of any software, if it has the same exe executable file, then you're going to end up with your computer confused as to, well, which version am I going to open if you double click that. So I always add a number for version in the folder, inside the folder at the exe file, as well as the name of the folder outside. Then you make create a new icon to put on your desktop.
Okay, let me interrupt here. So we're getting a couple more questions. I'm going to take the next 3 questions that are already typed in. If you have additional questions about this, go offline with Julie onto her. Is it you're dealing with this in the MTC Toots group? Is that where you're answering a lot of these questions?
I've been posting answers at MTC Toots. Mostly I've been answering them privately because people get really upset reading the same question over and over and over and over again. And so I'm answering privately. You can write to me privately, or I have printed instructions for all of this at the Cutter Software Facebook group. So if you go to Facebook and you go to Cutter Software group, in the Files section, there is a tutorial in the Files section called From Silhouette Studio DE to Make the Cut. And all of these instructions are posted in that document. You need to download the document and follow it step by step. And that's why I wrote it out, because if you miss a step, you're going to have trouble. And everybody, if you read the comments here on this Facebook page at Cutter Software, you'll find out that everybody who followed the instructions is able to get this to work. But I posted this before the update. And if you've done something since the update that you regretted, then you might want to system to before the update to yesterday. System restore. Only if you are sure you made a mess of things and didn't have a backup. And if you had a backup, you don't need to restore your system. You can copy your files back.
Okay, actually, I'm going to cut
So
off.
that's where the answers are.
Yeah, and I'm going to, because you gave all that information, you have it posted there as well. Once I switch over to me, you can pull up the questions. You can see there's a few more questions, all similar, sort of debugging individual issues here. So I'll let you read them. If you want to answer them on the questions, while I'm going over the last question, what I'm going to go over, feel free, or at least maybe, copy the questions, Julie, and then you can answer them privately if you want.
Okay.
I'm going to cut this off at this point for the silver.
Here, I'll show you some of the other stencils that are in the gallery that I converted to reverse stencils. There's 2 corners in the gallery. There's roses. There's the rose file that we started with to do reverse stencil, and the one that we got from the internet. So she wondered where we could get more images like this. So the sky's the limit, or should I say Google Images is endless as to what you can get. Just look for larger images and also black and white and type in stencil. So when I Googled this, I did stencil and I did flower. But if you do a stencil and whatever it is you're looking for, chances are you're going to find something that's already made into a stencil, and you won't have to worry about trying to create a stencil out of something else. So all of these that have no inside pieces, these are all good as stencils, and then you can copy and pixel trace in to make the cut, to make make it a cutting file, and then you can reverse it by just adding a shape and joining. So any of these that are stencils would work. So that's all I have for the questions posted.